yesterday, well, my friend and I were on a Zoom session, and we had the transcript running because we're weird that way. So we have a transcript copying what we're saying and everything. At a certain point, my dog Saint Bernard came in, and she was hungry, and so she does what she usually does. She'll come in and she'll bump my arm and she'll go, oh, you know how she does. Well, you don't, but she does, right? She's a dog. Dogs do that, right? It comes in woof woof, And the transcription read, okay. And so, the transcription program is doing just what this indicated that we do, and that is it's expecting English and a human voice, and it heard her go woof woof, and it gave its best interpretation of what that was. And so, okay, yes?
Right, there's a
moose. They've actually, you might not realize it, but they've all paid their tuition, and they're allowed, to attend classes here whenever they want. I should warn you that they actually do walk right along this window, and they're bigger than us sitting here. So if that gives you the EBGBs or something, to be sitting in a seat right next to a... Well, you do worry about how strong the windows are. If they slip and fall in, you might not really want to be sitting right next to the window. So you're welcome to move in further, or if you all feel like you're going to be distracted now and just take pictures of the moose, that's okay. I've done this before, so I'll ignore the moose. I won't even mention it. Thanks, though.
I go out that door.
Yeah, you do have to be careful. I've seen people with their cell phones walking right by a moose. Fortunately, the moose. We don't say like a group of geese. One goof, a group of geese. No, we don't say geese. That's irregular. In any case, be careful when you're out there if you're not paying attention to your surroundings, because we do have wildlife here. It has nothing to do with drinking. It's the animals. That's if you check the list of wildlife universities, we don't rate compared to Princeton and Purdue and other places that have a lot of bars and things. We don't even compete. But we do have our wildlife. Well, all right, let me get back to this guy, because it's pretty neat.
Brain basis of perception in a bit of a different light. Instead of perception depending largely on signals coming into the brain from the outside world, it depends as much, if not more, on perceptual predictions flowing in the opposite direction. We don't just passively perceive the world, we actively generate it. The world we experience comes as much, if not more, from the inside out as from the outside in. Let me give you one more example of perception as this active, constructive process. Here we've combined immersive virtual reality with image processing to simulate the effects of overly strong perceptual predictions on experience. In this panoramic video, we've transformed the world, which is in this case Sussex Campus, into a psychedelic playground. We've processed the footage using an algorithm based on Google's Deep Dream to simulate the effects of overly strong perceptual predictions, in this case to see dogs. And you can see this is a very strange thing. When perceptual predictions are too strong, as they are here, the result looks very much like the kinds of hallucinations people might report in altered states, or perhaps even in psychosis. Now think about this for a minute. If hallucination is a kind of uncontrolled perception, then perception right here and right now is also a kind of hallucination, but a controlled hallucination in which the brain's predictions are being reined in by sensory information from the world. In fact, we're all hallucinating all the time, including right now. It's just that when we agree about our hallucinations, we call that reality. Now I'm going to tell you that your experience of being a self, a specific experience of being you, is also a controlled hallucination generated by the brain. Now this seems a very strange idea, right? Yes, visual illusions might deceive my eyes, but how could I be deceived about what it means to be me? For most of us, the experience of being a person is so familiar, so unified and so continuous that it's difficult not to take it for granted, but we shouldn't take it for granted. There are in fact many different ways we experience being a self. There's the experience of having a body and of being a body. There are experiences of perceiving the world from a first-person point of view. There are experiences of intending to do things and of being the cause of things that happen in the world. And there are experiences of being a continuous and distinctive person over time, built from a rich set of memories and social interactions. Now, many experiments show, and psychiatrists and neurologists know very well, that these different ways in which we experience being a self can all come apart. What this means is a basic background experience of being a unified self is a rather fragile construction of the brain, another experience which, just like all others, requires explanation. So let's return to the bodily self. How does the brain generate the experience of being a body and of having a body? Well, just the same principles apply. The brain makes its best guess about what is and what is not part of its body. And there's a beautiful experiment in neuroscience to illustrate this. And unlike most neuroscience experiments, this is one you can do at home. All you need is one of these and a couple of paintbrushes. Now in the rubber hand illusion, a person's real hand is hidden from view, and that fake rubber hand is placed in front of them. Then both hands are simultaneously stroked with a paintbrush while the person stares at the fake hand. Now for most people, after a while, this leads to the very uncanny sensation that the fake hand is in fact part of their body. And the idea is that the congruence between seeing touch and feeling touch on an object that looks like a hand and is roughly where a hand should be is enough evidence for the brain to make its best guess that the fake hand is in fact part of the body.
That's mean, but it's still.
So you can measure all kinds of clever things, right? You can measure skin conductance and startle responses, but there's no need. It's clear the guy in blue has assimilated the fake. Now this means that even experiences of what our body is a kind of best guessing, a kind of controlled hallucination by the brain. Now there's one more thing. We don't just experience our bodies as objects in the world from the outside, we also experience them from within. We all experience a sense of being a body from the inside. And sensory signals coming from the inside of the body are continually telling the brain about the state of the internal organs, how the heart is doing, what blood pressure is like, lots of things. And this kind of perception, which we call interoception, is rather overlooked, but it's critically important because perception and regulation of the internal state of the body, well, that's what keeps us alive. Here's another version of the rubber hand illusion. This is from our lab at Sussex. And here people see a virtual reality version of their hand, which flashes red and black either in time or out of time with their heartbeat. And when it's flashing in time with their heartbeat, people have a stronger sense that it's in fact part of their body. So experiences of having a body are deeply grounded in perceiving our bodies from within. There's one last thing I want to draw your attention to, which is that experiences of the body from the inside are very different from experiences of the world around us. When I look around me, the world seems full of objects, tables, chairs, rubber hands, people, you lot. Even my own body in the world, I can perceive it as an object from the outside. But my experiences of the body from within, they're not like that at all. I don't perceive my kidneys here, my liver here, my spleen. I don't know where my spleen is, but somewhere. I don't perceive my insides as objects. In fact, I don't experience them much at all unless they go wrong. And this is important, I think. Perception of the internal state of the body isn't about figuring out what's there, it's about control and regulation, keeping the physiological variables within the tight bounds that are compatible with survival. When the brain uses predictions to figure out what's there, we perceive objects as the causes of sensations. But when the brain uses predictions to control and regulate things, we experience how well or how badly that control is going. So our most basic experiences of being a self, of being an embodied organism, are deeply grounded in the biological mechanisms that keep us alive. And when we follow this idea all the way through, we can start to see that all of our conscious experiences, since they all depend on the same mechanisms of predictive perception, all stem from this basic drive to stay alive. We experience the world and ourselves with, through, and because of our living bodies. Let me bring things together step by step. What we consciously see depends on the brain's best guess of what's out there. Our experienced world comes from the inside out, not just the outside in. The rubber hand illusion shows that this applies to our experiences of what is and what is not our body. And these self-related predictions depend critically on sensory signals coming from deep inside the body. And finally, experiences of being an embodied self are more about control and regulation than figuring out what's there. So our experiences of the world around us and ourselves within it, well, they're kinds of controlled hallucinations that have been shaped over millions of years of evolution to keep us alive in worlds full of danger and opportunity. We predict ourselves into existence. Now, I'll leave you with three implications of all this. First, just as we can misperceive the world, we can misperceive ourselves when the mechanisms of prediction go wrong. Understanding this opens many new opportunities in psychiatry and neurology, because we can finally get at the mechanisms rather than just treating the symptoms in conditions like depression and schizophrenia. Second, what it means to be me cannot be reduced to or uploaded to a software program running on a robot, however smart or sophisticated. We are biological flesh and blood animals whose conscious experiences are shaped at all levels by the biological mechanisms that keep us alive. Just making computers smarter is not going to make them sentient. Finally, our own individual inner universe, our way of being conscious, is just one possible way of being conscious. And even human consciousness generally, it's just a tiny region in a vast space of possible consciousnesses. Our individual selves and worlds are unique to each of us, but they're all grounded in biological mechanisms shared with many other living creatures. Now, these are fundamental changes in how we understand ourselves, but I think they should be celebrated because, as so often in science, from Copernicus, we're not at the center of the universe, to Darwin, we're related to all other creatures, to the present day. With a greater sense of understanding comes a greater sense of wonder and a greater realization that we are part of and not apart from the rest of nature. And when the end of consciousness comes, there's nothing to be afraid of. Nothing at all. Thank you.
Your mattress.
Oh, stop it.
No, I used to be so afraid when I was little. And I like found out that they-
I just saw that this weekend, and I thought, that's really cool, and ties in beautifully with David Hume, who is kind of part of what I think of as the climax of the course. Because what we're looking at in the next three classes, counting this one, we're looking at David Hume, and then Immanuel Kant, and then Hegel, George Friedrich Wilhelm Hegel, right? So we get three of the real biggies that basically lead us to our contemporary perspective. David Hume is the beginning of this, kind of the end of the British empiricist chain, which, we started with Hobbes, who's an empiricist, obviously. He's not officially considered part of the British empiricists because he doesn't have the British empiricist problem. That comes with John Locke. And with John Locke, we get the difference between, I think it's a pretty accurate realization that everything we see, hear, touch, taste, etc., is all a matter of how our perceptions interpret the stimulus that we're getting from all of those things. We get light, piercing our eye, or however you want to describe it, and we see not the thing, we see the light coming in. We feel things, and we don't actually feel the thing, we feel the pressure against our senses of touch, the various type. And we don't just have one, we have lots of different kinds of sense of touch. You can feel heat from a distance and so on. You know, you can feel smooth and rough and, you know, all kinds of neat things with the sense of touch. But for Locke, there was also the things that made an object real apart from our perceptions of it. And he called those the primary characteristics of the thing. And of course, the problem was, you know, how can you tell the